Okay, now, how do we put it together? Giving a lecture is telling a story. It may not be actually a story in the traditional sense of once upon a time, but it's a story. You're inviting your listeners to go with you on a journey. And therefore, the most important thing in preparation is not even the content. It's the transitions between one thing to another. You know, when you're telling a story, the measure of success that your storytelling is good is when people in the audience, whoever you're telling the story to, even if it's in bed with one of your kids, right? It's and then, and the word then is what? It's a transition word. It's indicating what happened then. How do we move to the next point? Because I can't wait until we get to the next point. And so that transition, in so many ways, the content that we give in a class is, yes, it's prepared, but really it's a product of a lifetime of experience, or even 2 years of experience, or whatever experience we have in Krishna consciousness. Every day when we practice and we study Prabhupada's books, we're preparing for the next time we have to talk about Krishna, right? Because hearing, Shravanam, leads to Kirtanam. So every time we're hearing in Kirtan and class, we are preparing for Kirtanam, to glorify Krishna, to speak it. So in some sense, we're always preparing content. When you prepare a class, you're going to offer what you know about Krishna. Whether it's a little or a lot, we just offer what we have. But often what trips us up is the transition. How do we pull the audience from one to another, and to another? So, again, let's go back to that Janmashtami class. You think, what am I going to say if I want to speak about Krishna for Janmashtami? Say we have 30 minutes for a Janmashtami address. Well, in terms of content, remember, as it is, right? We try to follow in the parampara. And one of the things we find is that Srila Prabhupada, whenever he gives a Janmashtami class, or for that matter, a Nrsimha Chaturdashi class, a festival class, one of the things he says, one of the things he most consistently uses in terms of content is that verse and that point from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, Janma karma chame divyam, evam yoveti tatvata. Krishna says, my birth and activities are divine. And one who knows this comes back to me and doesn't have to come back to the material world. So you think, I got to cover that, because Prabhupada makes that point repeatedly at whenever there's an appearance day of the Lord. And then let's say that the drama that day is about Krishna stealing butter. It's a play about Damodar Leela. So you have to say something about that to properly situate the audience for the play. So here are your two parameters, right? Janma karma chame divyam and Krishna as a butter thief. Neither one of those is going to require a lot of preparation for anyone in this room. Right? We know Krishna's story as butter thief, basically. We could read it again, get more details, but the heart of it we know and we appreciate. Same thing this point about Krishna's name and activity and birth being transcendental. The real question is, how do we weave the story? The real question is, how do we pull the audience in and never let them go until that 30 minutes is over? So we could start with either place. A nice place to start might be with the story of Krishna stealing butter. We begin by telling the audience, many of you here may have heard that Krishna's favorite food is butter. Now, what is it about butter that Krishna likes so much? If you took a block of butter from your fridge and chomped down on it, it wouldn't taste good. What is it about butter that Krishna likes? Well, this butter is freshly churned. The people of Vrindavan etc., etc. Mother Yashoda, and we tell this story. And of course, part of that story is the fact that Krishna is afraid, and Mother Yashoda comes at him with a stick, and he runs around. And we tell the story, and we say, how is it that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord of everything, is afraid of his mother? This is really confusing. And in fact, Queen Kunti, in her prayers, is confused. She says, Ati Vidambanam, this is very confusing to me. How is the one who is feared by fear personified afraid of his mother's stick? We cannot understand this easily. Why? Because Janma Karma Chame Divyam. Krishna's activities and birth are divine. And if we understand the secret behind why Krishna does this and what it means, we too can become liberated. Right? And in this way, you take one thing and you connect it to another. And then you spend 10 minutes talking about the philosophy of what makes Krishna the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? So you could do it in the other direction. You could start with Janma Karma Chame Divyam and lead to the butter thief. But my point is, the key is the transition, the storyline. How do you get your audience from one to another? And so think of a theme. Think of a couple points that you want to make. Take a theme, divide it into 3 or 4 points. But then find the thread that connects them. And memorize the transition, not the content, the transition. How are you going to get from one to another? And if you do that, then your audience will come with you. It'll become, and then, it'll become that kind of experience, and they'll follow you on that journey, and that's what we want.